Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to week 2 of the InkTV Resurgence League. I am joined tonight by Walkie and Shiny Hunter Zach for 2 wonderful matches. How are you two doing tonight?
Possibly the greatest day of the tournament thus far.
Yeah, lots of hype matches I think incoming. We've got some good storylines, and week 2, we've already gotten to see these teams play a little bit, and I think they've learned something just as much as we have.
Yeah, we certainly are going to be seeing teams both rebound from close losses and maybe struggle with different challenges from last week. We'll be checking out Jackpot versus Zero Deaths as our first match of the night. I am looking forward to this match for sure. What can you tell us about what they've gone through in the past week?
Yeah, I mean, Zero Deaths, you mentioned it. They're going to have to bounce back this week, losing to Crush Soda in week number 1. Jackpot still on a roll from their qualifying rounds, winning pretty easily against Nightmare. But back to Zero Deaths. The big thing to watch out for them is last week they didn't play with Isabel. This week they have the full roster at hand and they're looking to go. They know that they need to win this game if they want to make it into playoffs.
Yeah, sort of going off of what Walkie mentioned there, Jay was there playing the sloshing machine as well as a bit of the vanilla splash that has stuck around in this meta despite, being so dominant in the previous one. It's sort of shared its spotlight with the vanilla splash, but Zero Deaths, they adjust their composition a little bit. They're not really running the Neo Splash as far as actually Toyoben running it as far as last week is concerned. They had the double sloshing machine composition with Jay, as well as him running the Vanilla Splash 2, and then rounding it out with a ballpoint Splatlings. And we've seen a couple Splatlings in this tournament. We saw the heavy Splatling as well, coming out from .Q. We'll see if that shows up again today. So very interesting to see those anchor weapons start to reappear in the meta.
Yeah, certainly. Anchor weapons are something that have somewhat disappeared, but a few brave teams are bringing it back into style. Storm being one of those few. There was actually a bit of question about whether Storm would actually be able to make this match tonight. So basically, until earlier today, it was a question of whether or not he'd be making it and whether or not Zero Deaths would be competing with the full roster. But they will be here in full force, and Jackpot will certainly need to step up to take them on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even up until right before this match had Toyoben wondering if he was going to wake up on time, if Storm was going to wake up on time. So thankfully, everyone is squared to go on the side of Zero Deaths, and I like I said earlier, they know they need to win this game here today.
Yeah, no excuses this time. I know they're not the only team that's had a couple of question marks heading into today. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later with our next match. But for now, definitely looking forward to seeing how these two teams match up. Compositionally, they are slightly different. I did mention before the Splatling v Splatling matchup. I'm excited to see if Leafy sticks on that Wiper. I think that's a weapon that's really gotten the opportunity to shine, where before it was outshadowed in the previous meta by its counterpart in the Splatoon Stamper. And of course, the sloshing v sloshing is a very important battle too. I think the Booyah Bomb remains an important special, one that can be nicely comboed with the triple Ink Strike, which folks have, I think, varying opinions on. I think the Booyah Bomb there's much more of a consensus there that it is a quite powerful special in a lot of different situations to set yourself up for a either Rainmaker or Clam Blitz push, or to get folks off the tower, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked a little bit about Zero Deaths so far. We have a little intro video for them. We can introduce the entire team, which is Isabel, Storm, Phoenix, and Toyoben. We are going to actually jump to their stats, which we have calculated for the past weeks. This is one of my favorite parts of seeing lots of high-level matches. You get to kind of look at the data, see things you didn't really realize. So let's take a look at that and see what our analyst can tell us about them.
Yeah, right here, right off the bat, looking at it, Jackpot kind of clears in every single category compared to Zero Deaths. And those of you watching on stream here, anytime you see red, that means that the other team is, the victor in that category in particular. And not just the victor against Zero Deaths. If you look at kills per minute, Jackpot's actually the leader overall out of all the teams qualified here into the league in kills per minute. And I mean, you look at their qualifier to league stats, they're just so consistent, Zach.
Yeah, I think the consistency, it really is the key for Jackpot specifically. You can see their numbers barely budging. Special usage per minute by 0.01. Paint per minute just barely diminishing by about 30 or so. And I want to give Zero Deaths their credit. They're improving in some areas. You know, their special per minute is also holding rather steady and isn't that far behind Jackpot. And their paint is actually improving, but they're really going to have to step up their KDA especially. And I think obviously, you know, their stats being week to week, that's match dependent. But with, you know, their stats being relatively similar in terms of everything outside of the offensive game, hopefully they can focus on that aspect and see if they can get a couple of the important picks today while still maintaining that supportive mindset.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that. You mentioned it, definitely dependent on their week-to-week matchups. And we did mention it earlier. Isabel did not play last week. So that's a huge difference that maker in their kills per minute. You see them drop off by almost 2 there, going from their qualifier to their league matches. And I mean, you got to kind of attribute that just to Isabel in general, because if we actually look at the pages between our 2 key players here tonight, which are Leafy and Isabel themselves, you could see that Isabel is high up there in the kills for their team, and it's probably not going to be any different here today.
Yeah, certainly. A few players have been pulling ahead in terms of their kills, in terms of their paint, which we'll be seeing both tonight and tomorrow. We have several different little stat sheets to show you guys, but it's also important and worth noting, you know, how all of these teams work together, because even when individual players stand out, some teams more work as a unit. But we do have that sheet with Isabel and Leafy coming up in just a second.
Yeah, well, I mean, looking at what we have here on screen for the moment is, if I'm Jackpot, I have to, you know, be wary that, you know, once they get their full roster back in, they'll be able to perform similar to how they were in the qualifier. Here we finally do have the page coming up right here. On the left side for Jackpot, you see Leafy with their qualifier stats of their splats per minute being 2.289. That was actually top 5 in the entire qualifiers. And then on the other side, Isabel, not too far behind. I believe Isabel's number of 1.9 was around the 7th mark. So, Zach, these are 2 great slayers for their team.
Yeah, this is exactly where from week 1 to week 2, one of the major differences is going to happen. The compositions weren't exactly aligned in week 1, but going into week 2, Isabel's going to align these 2 teams specifically up much more considerably. So take a look at the percentage of usage there by Isabel on the Splatana Wiper, 63% compared to 37% on the Dark Tetris. Of course, there will be a time and a place for that matchup to happen. Orion is a player that comes to mind that we'll talk about later who favors those Dark Tetras. But of course, I mentioned as well, Splatana Stamper being certainly in Leafy's wheelhouse, especially. That's a weapon that was prevalent earlier on in the metagame. And you can see there as well the Tri-Slosher Nouveau, if you want to play a more supportive role, if you want to farm that tactical. And we've seen not just that, but also the NZAP 85 come out in this league as far as a weapon that can bring that tactical or special out. I think it's becoming a little bit more prevalent in the meta. I think it's allowing, especially since Ninja Squid got nerfed a little bit, it's a little bit easier at the onset when they're swimming to see them in the ink. I think that's going to be something that could be rather helpful if Leafy doesn't feel like taking that Wiper v Wiper matchup.
Yeah, certainly both of these players are on similar weapons, but I feel like the way they kind of go about it is certainly different. Leafy coming over off of both shooters and the machine, whereas Isabel coming more from that Tetra background. Both of these players, of course, are going to be kind of leading the push in for both of their teams here, and we'll see. I feel like we aren't going to be seeing this 1v1 matchup very much, but it's certainly a story we're going to have to follow as this next match comes on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the way these two teams, I think, play is quite different, and we'll probably see that from the way, as we get into game number one in a couple minutes now. But a lot of the play that is going to be coming on the side of Zero Deaths is going to be played off of the space created by, their Tetra Wiper player in Isabel. But on the other side, in Jackpot, it's kind of a more consistency in who's going to be going up front and creating that space. It could be Jared, it could be Leafy, or it could be Madness. All three have shown that they're capable of creating and starting those fights and having their teammates come in to support them.
Yeah, and that player that gets in the front lines is so important because that can either be your sacrificial lamb or that could be, as you mentioned, Walkie, the one that creates all that space. And to have a player who can do that without having to expend a special, in fact, while building their special on top of that, the Wiper is great for, especially with the Ultra Stamp buffs, getting in and staying in, not necessarily feeling as if they need to back out in order to use their special, in order to make the most of their main weapon. So that's going to be something to look out for in terms of, how differently that weapon, a same weapon, can be played. You can look at the sloshing machine the same way. How frequently do they crutch on or rely on their sub weapon, that fizzy bomb, instead of, how much do they build up that special? How much do they allocate to the main weapon, which can supply a lot of pressure. I mean, a direct hit basically doing almost 3/4 of a player's health. That is not an insignificant amount.
Yeah, certainly. Well, if anyone is familiar or unfamiliar with the tournament format we are going to be seeing tonight, we have a short video prepared by Kbot from the past, who will be introducing or reintroducing this format to you all, which will be seeing Zero Deaths versus Jackpot use.
The InkTV Resurgence League is finally here, with 8 of the best Splatoon teams that have qualified through 2 double elimination brackets so far. But what exactly does the league look like? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Based on their qualifying performance, each team is placed into one of 2 round-robin groups. That means each team has 3 different opponents they'll face during the league's regular. The top 2 in each group will move on to the single elimination playoffs bracket at the end of the season. Each match will feature a set play format. To kick things off, a coin flip will occur to determine which team will ban away one of the 4 ranked modes from the match. The opposite team will then decide the order in which the ranked modes are played. Each mode has 3 maps, and a team needs to win 2 out of those 3 maps to take the set on that ranked mode. The team that comes away with 2 out of the 3 set wins will be victorious in the match. Every single match will be streamed on Thursday and Friday nights over to InkTV's Twitch channel. The show will start at 6:40 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, with a ton of commentators and analysts to help break down the game and give their opinions and insights into what's actually going on. Take it from me, you won't want to miss this one because this is our resurgence.
Well, thank you so much for that, past Kbot. In line with that format, we see what these teams have ended up banning. Zero Deaths ended up banning Splat Zones. Jackpot has elected to pick the order: Tower Control, Clam Bits, and then Rainmaker. What can you guys tell us about what these teams might be thinking going into this?
Yeah, this was exactly the case for Zero Deaths last week. They didn't end up having to do it themselves, but they wanted to ban Splat Zones when they played against Crush Soda. They just feel like it's not their best mode. They feel like the other modes where they're allowed to, get up into the spawn of the enemy, those Rainmakers, those tower controls, and even Clam Blitz, you're obviously going into the goal on the enemy side right there. That they feel like that plays a lot to their strengths, and that's exactly what they're hoping to bring out here today. Isabel going in, the rest of them following suit.
Yeah, continuing the streak of not really having a lot of surprises here. Rainmakers has not been a very popular mode in this tournament series. It's been banned quite frequently, or it's been, in this case, relegated to the last possible and maybe unnecessary mode for the remaining list that actually survived the ban phase. So especially for a team in Zero Deaths that lost in week 1, both of our matches today featuring 1-0 teams taking on 0-1 teams, if they want to even the playing field and give themselves a reasonable shot to make the playoffs, of course, reminder, top 2 from each division making it into that playoff section, they're really going to need to play carefully, and I think winning the coin flip is a big part of that.
Yeah, certainly. You can choose a lot of your strategy going into these sets. Both of the teams know exactly what maps they're going to be playing ahead of time, so they really just need to choose. It's a little bit funny because if you give teams the option to just pick any map mode in the game, you always go to splat zones, it feels like. But in this, it feels like we don't even see splat zones all that often. We see it about half the time, which, you know, I feel like teams get to play to their strengths a little bit more in this league. So what do you guys expect to see coming out of Zero Deaths and Jackpot going into game one on Sturgeon Shipyard?
Yeah, I mean, Sturgeon Shipyard in general, I think this one could definitely play into Zero Death's favor. We've mentioned that they want to get in the face of their enemies, and this is a map where, you know, if you get past that second checkpoint, it could snowball so quickly, and that really honestly just is exactly what Zero Deaths wants. They want to put you on their heels, and they want you to be backing up and allow them to take that space. But on the other side, Jackpot just needs to stay true and win those fights out in mid and make sure it never gets to that point.
Yeah, in my opinion, maps 1 and 3 maybe a little bit more iconic as far as tournament purposes go than MakoMart for tower control specifically. I think we see MakoMart played a lot with splat zones, and I believe certainly included in the pool, and for good reason. But Sturgeon, you know, not sharing a lot of similarities with Inkblot, which I also think is both great for viewership and great to see how these teams perform. As Waki mentioned, Sturgeon very open, lots of avenues to come out of spawn initially, but it can also be quite easy to be locked into spawn once the enemy team goes down the main middle platform on the map to one of those later checkpoints, and that's when you really have to be saving and building up those specials, the counter specials on defense. I think a lot of teams tend to be more offensively minded than they are defensively, but that's just as strong and important a part of the game as the offensive aspect is. And thankfully for them, on Sturgeon Shipyard, where we're starting, tons of open space that they're likely not going to use at the beginning of the game if they do get 3 down or full wiped and are on the back foot to build up those specials and counterattack.
Yeah, certainly. So before we head into the match and toss it over to the casters, who do you guys have in this match?
I mean, I think Zero Deaths is going to put up a good fight. They have their full roster, but Jackpot sits at the top for a reason. They're so consistent, and I expect them to stay that way here today. So I'm giving this set over to Jackpot.
Yeah, I think among our casters, hosts, and analysts, there was only one pick of Zero Deaths, and it was not myself. I'm going to have to go with Jackpot. I really liked their performance in week 1. You know, they picked up the win there for a reason, and I think that's going to continue here. Hoping for a close one, always am, and love to see these teams that are perhaps underdogs overperform. But Jackpot has proved with consistency that they are a force to be reckoned with, and I feel like that will continue today.
Yeah, we'll see what both teams are going to be able to put up in this match. But for now, we are going to toss it over to the casters, Falco Flyer and Popgun. We'll be back after in between the sets and in between the 2 matches. Take it away, you guys.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the InkTV Resurgence League, Week 2, Day 1, Match 1.
You got it all right.
Jackpot versus Zero Deaths. He's Falco, I am Popgun, and Falco, welcome to Week 2.
Yeah, incredible week 1, as our lovely hosts and analysts were kind of describing last week. And we have a lovely match to start off with. Once again, Jackpot versus Zero Deaths. Jackpot coming off a very nice victory, not dropping a single game in their match against Nightmare, versus Zero Deaths, who unfortunately for them went down to Crush Soda after we saw some very interesting things in that set, especially at the very beginning with a few connection issues. Popgun.
Interesting is the politically correct term, and hopefully we can just keep things actually interesting in this set as we're hopping right into game 1. Isabel, along with Storm and Phoenix, all playing with their exact roster. This is the first time Zero Death, at least as far as the InkTV League is concerned, is playing with the roster they actually want to have here. Meanwhile, no changes coming out from the slot machines themselves. Jackpot's pretty much got a standard comp Leafy coming out with the Stamper.
Yeah, that's something we really didn't see during the week 1, and once again, we do see on the side of Zero Deaths coming out with that ballpoint, which I believe is what they had during the week 1. And right now, early on the tower is going to be Zero Deaths, but one player is going to go down. We're going to see an early crab come out on the side of Jackpot from Jared here. Look at this pop gun now. 3 are down. Phoenix trying to use a Booyah to stay alive, and actually manages to escape for just a little bit, but they are going to go down, so a very short-lived push there from Zero Deaths.
Things are looking good for Jackpot here. You got Jared up top on the snipe area, building up a crab that's going to guide the way for this first checkpoint to fall into their favor. But there goes a Fizzy Bomb out of nowhere. Did that alone cancel the crab? That was a little bit weird. Leafy keeping a good fight away from the towers. The first checkpoint does get cleared. And right now, there's just one crab that's here to defend the second checkpoint as well. Is it going to be enough?
Yeah, I mean, Toyoben here doing a good job getting it one nice pick, but look at this. Already at checkpoint 2, Jackpot getting there pretty quickly. And Leafy, look at that. Leafy staying alive, getting a few picks. We are going to see the delayed wipe, but once again, they survived much longer than I think they anticipated, and that helped push Jackpot to 25 this early on.
When you're the underdog, this is not the opening that you were looking for. Jackpot imposing their will immediately in the first minute and a half. But Isabel coming back in. Again, they didn't play last week. What can they provide this time around with those Tetras? They're going to be going in and quote-unquote feeding a lot. But all it takes is one of those times where they go in and get a double for this game to be flipped on its head. The problem is Jackpot can provide any of those opportunities for Isabel to go in there. So far in the first 2 minutes, they've been shutting down everything as Isabel goes down yet again.
Yeah, and it really seems like Zero Deaths are a little staggered on their specials. You know, they're popping the crab, but they're not getting the picks that they need to help push this tower. And speaking of which, tower is now back at mid. It looks like .Q is going to be hopping on to try and extend this push for Jackpot, as they seem to be uncontested. Toyoben sitting up there, getting the crab ready. They are going to be dropping down the tower. And it looks like Leafy is already prepped and ready to try and strike. Waiting for Storm. Is actually going to go up to Storm and gets a very nice pick. Still alive. It is just the Inkblot who is alive now. Now just Isabel on the side of Zero Deaths, so this looks like a push that is going to keep going, Pop Gun.
It looks like Zero Deaths is basically just waiting for Jackpot to make the first move, and Jackpot is more than happy to do that. They're sharking around those defensive spots. The second checkpoint is fallen. Now they just got to rush into the tower and hope they can keep the game going, and they do not. Jackpot takes game 1, dominating from start to finish and never looking back. The flanks coming out from the Tetras, well, not really flanks, they were coming right straight through mid, were not effective against Jackpot at all in that game 1.
No, and look at that map control 2 by Jackpot. Even when they didn't need to push the objective, they were pushing paint literally everywhere that they could possibly go. We saw some Booyah Bombs thrown all the way there in the back too to help just apply some more pressure. So when it looked like Zero Deaths had an opportunity with Isabel doing a really nice job using the reslider, unfortunately it did not last long for them.
It seemed like they were just waiting for Isabel to be the catalyst to get everything going. They weren't moving with the Tetras. They were just staying back. And again, it was like they were waiting for Jackpot to be the person who led the dance. They're at the prom and they're sitting there with Jackpot. They're happy to be on the stage here, but they're letting Jackpot make all of the moves and they're just reacting to what they're doing. And at that time, it looked like they were just waiting to lose instead of being the more aggressive team. Outside of what we saw with those Tetras basically just sliding in by themselves.
Yeah, I mean, and especially when you have a Stamper as strong as Leafy doing what they do best, which is just striking up and getting those key picks, it's going to be really hard to play against them. And so we certainly did see Zero Deaths struggle with that. But hey, for as quick as that game was, Zero Deaths, they were able to hold on for a little bit at the beginning. And of course, moving on to our next map, we can see if Zero Deaths can make some changes and adapt a little bit differently.
Game 2 is going to be coming up momentarily. It's going to be MakoMart, a classic tower control map. I like how map 3 is Inkblot Art Academy, just to kind of add a little bit of variety there when it comes to a decisive game 3. If we even get to that point is the question right now. If Jackpot plays like this is why everybody except for Nox on the commentator panel picked Jackpot to win. Just because of what they showed in that last game. But again, this is the first time Zero Deaths been playing with this 4 roster in this tournament in particular. So how are they going to make the adjustments going forward? Are they going to be able to get back onto their feet? Or is this going to be just too much of a mountain that they have to climb? We see now Isabel dropping the Tetras, and we might see a sword fight going on with mid with Leafy here at the grocery store.
We are going to see a sword fight with these two players. Once again, Storm sticking with the ballpoint. And, oh man, I was not expecting a Stamper versus Stamper for this set, Popgun. You know, we talked about how Leafy was probably going to use it, but for me, this is a surprise from Isabel. And striking first, it is going to be Zero Deaths, who take down 2 members from Jackpot, not taking control of the tower just yet, as Toyoben is trying to find some players to strike out. We do see an Inkjet come out. They're really going to need to capitalize on this since they haven't had that much of an opportunity in the first game, and they finally do, getting to this first checkpoint 30 seconds in.
Inkjet was an excellent special in Splatoon 2 on this map in particular. So that's where that ballpoint's going to come into play. Inkjet recently getting a little bit of a buff, especially with how you bump from the jumping out while you have the Inkjet up. So they're really going to need Storm to be productive with those Inkjets here. But so far, Jackpot able to weather the storm. Yeah, they got punched in the mouth early. They able to save the first checkpoint. It's like nothing ever happened.
No, and Jackpot is so patient. You know, they're fine letting Zero Deaths take control. This is a really nice pick there by Leafy, just splatting Isabel. That's the sword fight we talked about, Popgun. But, you know, Jackpot, they're doing such a good job with their patience. You know, knowing, okay, we're going to get all of the paint around this objective before we push up. And right now, that's what got them to 54. But look at this. Isabel staying alive, pushing forward. 3 players are down there on Jackpot. So right now, Zero Deaths trying to capitalize on this opportunity as well, as the tower is going to be back to mid, but map control slightly in Zero Deaths' favor.
Yeah, and that was Isabel going by themselves yet again. Maybe we pan back. There's someone else coming to support, but it's Isabel trying to create everything, and everybody else is trying to get set up into the exact positions that they want to be in to try to get the tower going. But they seemed a little bit staggered right there, getting the wipeout, and this first checkpoint's gone. And look how are all 4 of them on the tower?
I think for a
oh,
moment,
they're jumping off it.
Yeah.
Off it to start spawn camping there.
Right. You know, it's you know, that's not something you typically see at high level. Like, why are we all crowding on the objective? But no, look and see. This is exactly what happened. This allowed Jared to push up so far and get some key picks as .Q's still in the tower. Madness getting ready for that. We are going to be throwing it, and he's going to be splatting Isabel. .Q's still alive. Now going to go down 2v2. Storm rushing towards the tower, able to take down a few players. It is just going to be the splash on the side of Jackpot. And man, Zero Deaths here, they really need to get some more map control of mid. But look at that, 2 checkpoints taken through for Jackpot.
Hey, this is a win for Zero Deaths. They were able to save that 3rd checkpoint. It looks for sure like they were going to lose it. There's still about 2 minutes and some change left on the clock. Yes, they haven't cleared a single checkpoint yet, but now they got Phoenix trying to ledge camp with that machine instead of Isabel, who I believe is going to be flanking around the backside right now. No, instead they're zip casting and at least drawing some tension away from the tower. And nicely done by Phoenix right there, recognizing that everybody was distracted by the Spider-Man going on behind the base, able to flank around and get a couple of 1v0s where they could take some fights where nobody's fighting back at them. And now look at this, they're already at the 2nd checkpoint. They're losing a lot of players along the way, and they're probably not going to clear the 2nd checkpoint, but they still got what they needed out of that 30-second stretch.
Yeah, that has been by far Zero Death's best push that they've had in this game. And like you said, you don't need to get the picks as the zip caster. You just need to serve as a distraction, have one of your Slayers come in and just clean up. And that's what got them to 36. Now, unfortunately for Zero Deaths, that's not quite the 13 that they need with 1 minute, 20 seconds remaining. And here we go. Isabel taking down Leafy there, this time with the Stamper. 2 players now going to be down on Jackpot as this tower is going to be uncontested, going back to mid. And this is going to be a very difficult opportunity for Zero Deaths with 1 minute remaining, losing a ton of map control.
If there's going to be any point in this game where Inkjet can shine, it has to be right now. Instead, it gets taken care of, only getting an assist. But 2 players do go down from the side of Jackpot. The problem is, look how purple mid is right now. So as Zero Deaths starts to make their way back towards the objective, they have to climb through that paint. And as they're doing that, they lose 2 players basically for free along the left side. Phoenix gets cleaned up as well. That's a bit of a delayed wipe right now. And all Jackpot has to do is build up the GG specials, get a crab, get a booyah bomb, and they can close this set out.
Yeah, and here they're not going to try anything fancy, really. They're not going to push up as far as they can just because they don't want to risk getting splatted. So that's why they're kind of hugging this wall. But unfortunately there, Leafy is going to go down to Phoenix as this tower now is going to be uncontested. Toyo Bandit cracks the crab on the tower with 15 seconds remaining. So this will be an opportunity for Zero Deaths. This is going to be the last champ. We see the Inkjet pushing up with Storm. We also see the Zipcaster very far extended. Now the Sniper is going to be rushing towards the tower, but like you said, Popgun, the GG specials, there you go. Jared getting on the tower, giving Jackpot this set victory.
Zero Deaths able to make it interesting towards the end right there. The problem is when you throw a GG bomb onto the tower, that's pretty much GG right there. There's not really a whole lot you can do about that. The Inkjet came off in a perfect spot by Storm. They were taking the fight with the crab. They're trying to get some more splats with that thing. Again, it's just too much of a mountain to climb back. That wipeout in the middle of the game where Jackpot was able to get established and take the fight on the enemy plat was the real difference right there. That was the one moment where Jackpot got the lead that they could just coast all the way through to the end.
Yeah, I mean, there we saw Zero Deaths play much better than they did in their first game. You know, some things you just kind of have to play and adapt, and you might have certain maps and modes that you're more particularly fond of. And look at this. This is the moments when Toyo Ben had to hop on the tower. They knew that this was the perfect opportunity. We're going to see the Inkjet push up here, applying some pressure onto this crab and onto Madness in the back there. We see the Zipcaster as well, but like you said, Popgun, just get your strikes. You don't need to... It's not a very time-sensitive special that you have to do, so I think Jackpot, they were just set up so specifically to win, given the opportunities that they had.
Game and set goes into the favor of Jackpot, who is now 6-0 per games in this tournament the past 2 weeks. With that, the set is concluded. Jackpot is now one more set away from going 2-0 per matches. We will toss it now back to our analyst desk so that I can review what we just saw.
Thank you for that, Popgun and Falco. That was the first set going 2-0 to Jackpot in a pretty commanding fashion. Any thoughts from that game, Zach?
Man, tough to really see. I mean, it's sort of what we expected. It's very much the emphatic performance that we got and we're expecting to come out from Jackpot. And we got to see not the Wiper v Wiper, we got to see instead the Stamper v Stamper. And I think all of the time spent on that weapon really paid off for Jackpot. It's still very strong. The Zipcaster, you know, not seeing as much maybe use as some of the other specials do a lot of turfing and inking, but man, that burst combo still feels very tough to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that a lot of teams have kind of realized this week in particular. We're seeing from a lot of tweets around some of these top players is Double Splash is honestly back on top, along with the Stamper. It's just those burst bombs, the way you're able to help your teammates finish off those picks, man, it's just a hard thing to really deal with right now in the current meta, and we're seeing that unfold. We saw, obviously, you mentioned those burst bombs helping each other out on the side of Jackpot to finish up those picks. You know, whenever someone's using a crab tank, you get that little bit of extra damage. You throw in the burst bomb, they're dead. So that's something we could expect to see throughout, you know, possibly this whole week of games, as we're, you know, still, I think everyone's adjusting to the meta, but adjusting maybe backwards towards the past one for a little bit. But I mean, talking about what we saw in general on the side of Zero Deaths, I felt like Zero Deaths kind of didn't play their own game. And what was I was so excited about watching them through the qualifiers was everybody kind of stuck to what they're really good at and played to their strengths. We saw, obviously, you know, Isabel, mostly known as a Tetra player, here trying to play Stamper for the team. And I feel like the team wasn't really able to adapt to this new play style maybe that they're going for. Yes, Stamper and Tetras are both weapons that push, you know, the offense and get things going, but I still think that there's a difference in the speed between the two, and that kind of threw them off on the side of Zero Deaths. They weren't prepared for that comp switch.
Yeah, certainly. Now is no time to quit playing your own game. We're going to be moving into Clam Blitz on the next map, but here's this clip of Zero Deaths attempting to make a defense on that first match. What can you tell us about it, Zach?
Well, I mean, you look at their composition here. They have the Tetris, which are meant to be offensive. You have the Ballpoint, which certainly likes to have all of that room in the back to have the sight lines on to play with. But the special, of course, being the Inkjet, is more geared toward those offensive pushes. So when you're relegated all the way back there, you're basically not being able to make use of such a large portion of your kit. Whereas if you go something like a heavy Splatling, that Wave Breaker feels like it's useful pretty much anywhere on the map. Now looking over here at MakoMart, we see basically them getting a couple of picks, which is great, able to make a big use of the map control here as well. And that's something that is a key part of any game, is very, very difficult to constantly maintain. And 13, you can see Jackpot getting up to their so difficult of a number on these mid to larger size maps to come back on, especially with an objective that moves at a relatively set or fixed pace, like on tower control.
Yes. It's definitely looked like Zero Deaths has had a hard time kind of finding their stride, but we will see if they're able to do that. Again, our next set is going to be Clam Blitz, as decided by Jackpot in order. So we're going to take a look at the map list and give our thoughts on what might be upcoming. Museum de Alfonsino is where we're going to start, then over to Inkblot and Scorch if we need it. I believe Scorch last time was where Zero Deaths secured their ticket into the league, but they're going to need to do a lot of work to even make it there, Walkie.
Yeah, it's definitely an uphill battle for them, as you mentioned, getting to that one that they feel comfortable on. But I think Clam Blitz in general might allow them to get back to their own pace of gameplay and really push the tempo, because right now Jackpot is completely controlling the tempo of this game. And Zero Deaths has to be able to respond. They saw some signs of life on a couple of their pushes in that second game, in that tower control game on MakoMart. But now, it's a complete reset here. I want to see if they're able to kind of take the fight to Jackpot rather than Jackpot just winning out those slower fights in mid.
Certainly. Zach, do you have any last thoughts before we toss it back to the casters for our next set?
Yeah, just really quickly, I sort of have the same thoughts map-wise, that 1 and 3 feel much more like Clam Blitz maps to me than Inkblot Art Academy does. Of course, I see that more as like a TC, even, sometimes Rainmaker occasionally, but it plays very differently, I think, than Scourge Gorge. But Museum and Inkblot, you basically have the same strategy where you have relatively short paths from mid up a ramp and to that barricade, whereas Scorch Gorge, it's a bit longer from your spawn, not as long of a way to go on either of the first two maps. So if you aren't forced all the way back into those plat areas or those open areas near your spawn, you're going to be in a much better position. That, I think, would lend itself to a playstyle of, if you go 1 or 2 down, maybe don't try and press the advantage if you can at all avoid it. Get out while you still can. Save those ultimates. I don't see much special saver from either of these teams or players. So that, I think, is going to be a strategy if they get behind.
Well, we'll see if Jackpot's going to continue their commanding pressure or Zero Deaths is going to make a miraculous comeback. Popgun and Falco will be guiding us through our second set on Clam Blitz.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the InkTV Resurgence League Week 2, match number 1 between Jackpot and Zero Deaths. My name is Talkofire, joined here by Popgun, and we saw a pretty dominant performance there by Jackpot over Zero Deaths. And like our lovely analyst said, we are moving on to set number 2, which will be Clam Blitz. And Popgun, neither of these teams played it during their first week.
Yeah, but that's because both teams were in a 2-0 set. Jackpot dismissed Nightmare like they were a bug underneath their shoe, and Zero Depths was able to disconnect their way through a 4-0 loss to Crush Soda. So that's it. Both teams are just happy to be in this situation right now. Also, by the way, this is a storyline. There were no DCs in the last game. Everything's been fixed. It's not going to happen throughout this set, Falco.
I know, like, it's amazing. We did it. We did it. It's always lovely to see. We're going to be starting off on Museum d'Alfonsino for Clam Blitz in our first game for these two teams. And I mean, okay, we know kind of what weapons these teams specialize in. We don't really have to make prediction because the game is going to be starting. Oh, there we go. I guess there's a few things that we do need to take care of before we get that before we get that taken care of. So, hey, we'll wait. Of course, we couldn't really get a preview of what these teams are going to be playing, but I'm sure whenever our lovely broadcaster lets us know, we will know.
No, I saw a snippet there. There was a Splatoon wiper coming out from Isabel. This is a player that has seemingly been doing nothing but Tetris for the vast majority of their career in Splatoon 2 and 3 up to this point. They used Stamper in game 2. Now they're using the wiper possibly in that other game. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's the interesting storyline because we were expecting nothing but Tetris coming out. Now it's the same kind of philosophy, I guess, which is hold forward and eventually you'll get the splats that you need, keep the distraction away, be a skirmisher, if you will. But yeah, that's the third different weapon in as many games from Isabel. If that is the weapon they choose to stick with, I guess we'll get the answer momentarily if this one is actually going to be loaded up correctly. Yep, there it is.
Yeah, you called it. You called it.
And a wiper coming out yet again from Leafy on the other side. .Q is going to say, hey, that inkjet looked kind of fun from Storm over there. Let me take a crack at that. That is Drop Roller inkjet, by the way, coming out from them.
And we have completely mirrored comps at this point. I mean, nothing is different for any of these players.
Right.
Like the thing is, you see that if you see a double splash or a double splash, double machine, you know. But here, this comp is a little more, I'll say, unorthodox for having it being mirrored. And look at this. Two players now going to be going down on the side of Jackpot as Zero Death's able to push up. Again, working on some of these clams. Toyo Ben sitting at 7, trying to apply some pressure, but this might be a good opportunity for them to try and strike pretty soon as they have control of mid and control of the side on Jackpot.
This looks so weird. Is this Jackpot trying to beat Zero Death at their own game? They've been the one kind of dictating the tempo of this entire set so far. Instead, they're making a comp that matches what Zero Death is trying to do right here. And it's Zero Death that's at least winning the initial push right here until they're not. Okay, they popped the basket, but the worst thing you do in Clam Blitz is get wiped out. Jackpot recognizes that. They're not wasting time. They're not painting mid. They're just getting some clams built up, getting some specials, and they're going right into the enemy flat.
Yeah, and especially with how small, I'll say small and easy it is to pass mid in this stage. When you have the wipeout, you can get all of your players up on the enemy flat. .Q getting a power claim, going to be throwing it in. Two players still down on the side of Zero Deaths. Jackpot able to take the lead, and look at all of these claims go in, getting all the way down to 41. Two players are still down on the side of Zero Deaths. Leafy trying to throw up some clams over to Jarrett, who is still alive, has the crab ready, but it looks like this push will be ending at 38, and man, those points stacked up pretty quickly, Papa.
The push is ending, but Jackpot's not going anywhere. They've set up shop into the enemy flat, and they're, well, it did for a little bit right there, and still they're going to have to start backing off. Excuse me, though, Jared able to drag two players down the hell with them, combined with a wipeout, and Jackpot is right back where they left off. Seemingly everything was over until it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, they just retreated for a little bit. They're like, hey, you know, we're not done with this push. We're going to keep this going. And they get past their penalty points that they had. A pretty hefty fine, too, at that. Getting down to 31. And it looks like not many players are in a good position to follow up, as we do see an inkjet out there from .Q and no players ready to score. Oh, they're going to be trying to jump behind. Look at this pop gun.
How'd they get back there? What is going on here? Oh,
what? Are you serious, Leafy?
Jackpot, they're going to get a wipeout on top of this as well. Oh, Jackpot's just clouding on him at this point.
I don't know how that jump happened either. I mean, why would we focus our attention over that way? Look at that knockout, too. Oh, my goodness. You know, we assumed it was going to be, okay, Jackpot takes the lead. They're going to back out. And, you know, they didn't really have an opportunity to push more claims in during that push, but just like, no, we're going to jump this power claim back here. And whenever you jump that far to your enemy's spawn, all the attention has to go over there. You got to throw all of your players over there because that is your #1 priority to try and take them out. What a weird ending to that game.
Woo. Jackpot just did Zero Death's comp and beat him with it. That says, yeah, how did they get back there? More importantly, how did Zero Deaths allow them to get back there? It's not like they were wiped or anything in that scenario. I believe they had all 4 players that just lost track of somebody, and they said, all right, well, I guess I'll just stay here and to set up shop. But again, it looked like there were some moments where Zero Depth showed some light there, especially in the beginning of the game where they got control of the enemy plat, especially when they were able to clear out their own plat and they were starting to chase the players retreating until Jared realized, oh, wait a minute, I can catch you guys off guard in your chase and I can get a double. Madness can clean it up and we can just keep on going. Jackpot's just flexing right now.
Well, the thing is, Zero Deaths, they didn't have a reason to look over there. When you spawn in on this map, you're just kind of like launching towards the basket. There's no reason for Zero Deaths to really focus their attention there on the right side, unless, of course, somebody's jumping with a power clam, and then you have an amazing Stamper player who's going to splat you. So, yeah, a very, very interesting ending, but I love how it was executed by Jackpot. I mean, you have to applaud them for knowing the right flanking opportunity, and they really took control of that one. We're going to be hopping into Game 2 here on Clam Blitz. It is going to be Inkblot. So what's at stake here? Jackpot, they win this. They win the set. And it looks like Zero Deaths trying to stay alive.
Going back to more of a similar comp to what they were using a bit earlier, the only difference is that Leafy is now on the Tri-Nouveau with Soda and Fizzy Bomb. Isabel going back to those Tetras, trying to work in combination with everybody else on that Zero Depths team to try to get control of mid, but right now Jackpot is not allowing them to do that. The basket's already been popped. I don't know if they're going to get any points out of this, though. It's only Madness that's got the player that has clams to work with, and they're not going to find a way up to that plat. So an empty push coming out there from Jackpot, and now it's up to Zero Depths to respond.
Yeah, they're going to have to respawn, and it looks like it's not going super well for them at this moment, as Jackpot still has some control of mid. But like you said, kind of an early push that we weren't really expecting, especially having no follow-up. But either way, it's still setting Jackpot up pretty well here. So, I mean, look at this. This is going to be now an opportunity for Zero Depths to take a little bit more control. And it seems like they're doing. Isabel on the Reef Slider, getting one, and then going to go down. It is just Madness alive once again, I believe. Or no, it's just one player alive on the side of Jackpot, as Zero Depths able to get some more control. They're going to break that basket open and likely take the lead in this situation. But I don't see any claims from them, Popka.
Yeah, that was your moment. That's the moment where you take the lead and you bury Jackpot. You get a huge lead that you can ride out the game with. Instead, they just didn't have the clams they needed, squandering an opportunity by Isabel, getting a huge double in the enemy plat with the Reef Slider, and they get nothing out of that. And look at Jackpot responding right back, saying, nah, we're going to get value out of our pushes, and this might be it right here, Falco.
Yeah, and this, okay, like you said, value out of our pushes. This is the first time in 3 pushes that either team has really done that. They are getting value. They are eating up that value meal, getting all the way down to 40, getting some picks, but not before Storm stays alive, trying to take down Madness, able to do that. 3 minutes remaining. Jackpot pushing all the way to 40, and we've seen this situation from Zero Deaths, kind of how it really has come back in their favor, and we've seen how Jackpot thrives in these situations.
This is basic. Man, they're just shutting down Isabel left and right. And again, that's why it's so frustrating that one Reef-Slider play that worked. That's exactly what you're looking for. That's why you're using Tetris for those random explosion plays that can bust everything open. That might be the only opportunity that they get right here. Still, Isabel's going to keep trying, now working around this left side, but as they're trying to make a move here, Storm goes down on the backside. The map starts turning this macaroni orangish yellowish color, and the rest of Jackpot starting to move up. It's a 2v1 situation. Madness trying to force something that's really not there. Great cleanup by Storm. But while all this is going on, more and more time is getting ticked off the clock. 2 minutes remaining here, and to their credit, at least Zero Depth is still in this one. They're trying to push back, but look, yet again, 2 more players instantly going down for nothing in return.
Yeah, and the map control, between all the map control, the clam control, and just overall player advantage here, like we said, Jackpot able to just really hold on. They're going to be scoring once more, but now in a position where it doesn't look like they are going to follow up. But of course, as long as the enemy basket is open, that is going to force them to struggle and not be on offense. So, again, Jackpot can just keep this up, keep the pressure up. Even if they don't need to score, this is going to serve them well in the next minute and 30 seconds.
And there's your wipeout for Zero Depths as they can try to get something going here. You see a player running in immediately with the power clam as Phoenix builds up one of their own. The question is, can they get the value out of this push they need, or are they going to start backing up and save some of these resources for a second push? Madness is going to answer that question for them, saying, we're going to go get this. And look at .Q immediately picking up this Mercy Clam. That indicates that Jackpot's going to go for the kill right here. They see a little bit of an opening onto the plat as Jared's going to try to open it a little bit more with this crab tank, as we see Madness working around that right side as well. Actually, that was Leafy with Madness coming in from the rear. Isabel caught out yet again on their own with one more player just trying to force them away. Man, look how yellow that map is, though. This might be the end of this set.
Yeah, I don't really know how Zero Deaths is going to contest. They have a lot of clams right now, but again, you need to form a power clam in the next 20 seconds if you want to push, which, they're very well capable of doing. But like you said, just dealing with that map control that Jackpot has pushed out is going to be very difficult. Toyoben now with the power clam, 15 seconds left as they are trying to push towards the basket. It looks like they are making their way there, but no, two are going to go down. We see the Booyah come out, and Toyoben still just being chased over there on the left stack as they have to retreat so far. This is going to be a major uphill battle, and I think we are looking at a set victory for Jackpot.
Unless this crab can just go insane right here. Storm able to get one splat on Madness, but the crab gets taken care of before it can pop, and it just comes down to this machine versus the world. Somebody's working on their squid bagging techniques, and Jackpot says sayonara to Zero Deaths 4-0 as they sweep the set.
Yeah, it's sweeping the set this week, sweeping their set last week. Like you said at the beginning of this set, they were 6-0, now 8-0 and 2-0 in their matches, and they will have a very tough opponent as they enter week 3. So a very, very wonderful victory there by Jackpot. I loved the mirror comp, especially during that first game that we saw. A little unorthodox that we would see a mirror comp kind of not having like a double splash of a machine like that, but overall very well played. And let's take a look here at the replays from this set. Here we go. We see Jackpot pushing up on the enemy plat and still scoring in clams. And this is the pressure pop gun that you said we didn't see during the first 2 pushes.
We didn't, but the difference between this entire set, you can say Zero Depths had some moments in all of the games except for the very first one. They never had a chance in that one, but they had their moments to where they could grab control of the lead or just grab control of the game in general. The difference is Jackpot had like 10 of those moments throughout every single game. So for Zero Depths to win, they just have to have one miracle play versus Jackpot, who can have several attempts to get lead, fail a couple of times because they know their opportunities are going to come right back in another few seconds or so. Jackpot's just better. If we just want to boil it down, if we want to toss it over to our analysts and break it down more in depth, the thesis of this is Jackpot's just better.
So
there's not much else to say.
Yeah, next week Jackpot is going to take on Crush Soda, where Zero Deaths will be taking on Nightmare. So I think a very good matchup for both of those teams. But yes, let's, like you said, toss it over to our hosts and analysts to walk us through this set.
Thank you, Falco and Popgun. That was quite the dominating set coming out from Jackpot, showing us that there's levels to this. They won quite handily against Nightmare, and they won just as handily against Zero Deaths. Zero Deaths felt like they were at a bit of a loss for what to do during that set. What did you guys notice during the few games that we saw?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. There's levels to this, and Jackpot currently sits at the top of it right now. Honestly, looking like they might be able to take on anyone throughout this entire league, just getting better and better each week that we see them. And then on the other side for Zero Deaths, they have a lot to figure out here going forward. And I think the biggest difference that I could see from them on that in the Clam Blitz set in general was that, they needed to learn when to take those fights and the opportunities that would allow them to score. A lot of the times they would get into these fights where they had 0 clams, and then while the enemy team is respawning, that's when you're collecting all your clams, and that just does not make for a very strong push. Popgun pointed that out. They weren't really able to get anything off of near full wipes on the other side. So, and then on for Jackpot, every time they got the wipe or they got into the enemy plat, you saw them with a power clam and a half, 2 power clams at the ready to score in there. And that was really the difference in that game there.
Yeah, I think Popgun said it best. Right now, Jackpot's just better. And I think their toughest test before heading even into the playoffs is still ahead of them next week against Crush Soda. But for now, taking a look at this set, it's not for lack of trying. Of course, it's Zero Deaths. They changed their composition. They go off the Stamper and head to the Wiper. They try to play that more aggressive game with Isabel going to the Dark Tetras. And we were mentioning it while we were watching the play style of Isabel, of just staying just out of the effective ranges of a lot of these players. We saw that against players like Leafy, who swapped on that second game to the Tri-Nouveau, and was able to make strong use of that. We saw some pretty decent plays, but the ability to overcome the pushes that are being made, and whether that's Zero Deaths getting a bit overconfident with the strength of their push, or if that's Jackpot's ability to just hold it down like a brick wall and save those 1 or 2 specials or build them up that quickly after coming back from spawn, is so important and indicative of what makes them an upper echelon team, or at least an echelon above where both right now Zero Deaths and Nightmare sit.
Yeah, it certainly was relatively one-sided, but both of these teams certainly showed that they have a lot of strong individual players, but whether or not you can really pull out the important wins depends a lot on getting together as a team and making your plays quickly, because there's so little room for error at this high a level. If you guys had to pick a player of the match, could be on either team, who would you pick?
That's a hard one, but I mean, I'd have to say overall everybody on Jackpot did an amazing job, but I think Jared for me was the player of the match. Just so consistent in the ways that they play, able to take down 1v2 situations with ease, just because they're realizing, their right opportunities to attack. I think that set kind of the difference. So I'd have to say Jared really put on a good show today.
Yeah, I think I'll give it to Jared as well, but I want to give, of course, the honorable mention to Isabel, not playing in week 1, coming back in here in week 2, and really making their presence felt. I think they did a strong job of showing up for their team. It was just a lot, and especially players like DotQ stepping up and even matching the composition, going over to the ballpoint spot link to counter Storm, and even outperforming them at points during the match, I think is indicative of how big of a team differential this one really was, and they'll need that strength up 2-0 with a record down Group A, and they'll be going up against Crush Soda again next week. That is going to be a very strong match, and one that could be indicative of those two teams if they should both make it to the playoffs later on.
Yeah, certainly. So with this, that means that Jackpot now has 2 wins. Their divisions of 4 teams each. So you'll play 3 matches. Jackpot having won 2 of those, they will be making the playoffs. Zero Deaths and Nightmare both. Zero Deaths at 2 losses now. I believe that they may be out of the playoffs at this point. Crush Soda and Nightmare, the other 2 in that division. We'll be seeing how this one, as well as the other division, will be shaping up. We'll talk about the next match in just a bit. We have an interview coming up very shortly, which is going to be with Jared, I believe, from Jackpot. I'm certainly looking forward to that, because if you guys remember last week at all, the Madness interview, it sort of felt like Jackpot was just, it was just a normal Thursday, normal Tuesday for Jackpot. They're going through the motions and still managed to come out on top. I'm kind of curious whether this one felt the same way for them.
Yeah, I think for Jackpot in general, they got to be feeling good about themselves going into this. Like I said, improving week after week, qualifier to the league now as well. This team is just so consistent in the way that they play, and I think it comes down to they all know their defined roles. They all know how to help each other in different situations, and we're seeing that through the coordination that they showed on, especially compared to Zero Deaths in this match in particular. There were a lot of times where I was watching and I'm yelling at the players on Zero Deaths to, go and help their teammate. You just need to throw one burst bomb or one slosher in that area and you'll get the kill. But on the side of Jackpot, I didn't even have to think that at all. It was already even done before I could even think for a teammate to need help there. So it's just Jackpot's on another level right now.
Yeah, we can speculate as analysts and casters on the plays that are being made and what sort of strategies they had going into the set itself. But the player interviews are such a spectacular time for us to get that little window and insight into what the teams are actually thinking. Sometimes it really is that deep to where, they came into it thinking about, what their opponent was going to play and the maps that they were going to play on. And sometimes it's just another day of Splatoon for them. They're just going out there and doing what they always do, what they have the mechanical skill and the muscle memory to do. And I'm very interested to see in this interview with Jared if that latter aspect holds true for a team that has really steamrolled their way through these first 2 weeks.
Yeah, we will toss it over to the casters, Popgun and Falco, to do the interview with Jared and see what he has to say. Take it away.
Hello, friends. Welcome back. We are here with Jared from Jackpot. Jared, Jackpot, you guys are 8-0 per games, 4-0 per sets, and 2-0 per matches so far in the first 2 weeks of the league. How does it feel to be this dominant so far?
It feels really good. It feels good to know that our hard work is paying off because we've been streaming a lot and we want to prove that, another team in the West can keep up with Starburst and AR, those two dominant teams.
Now, Jared, we know Jackpot is a very strong team, and we knew how dominant you were during this set. One of the things that Popkin and I clearly pointed out during that second game, Clam Blitz on Museum, what the heck happened there after you guys scored initially, the basket closed, we saw some clams, power claims jumping into the back of Zero Death spawn. How did that happen?
I don't know. Like, Madden's like, yo, I killed three. And Leafy's like, I'm behind them, guys. I'm sharking. Okay. And like, Madden's like, I'm jumping. I'm like, no, don't jump. And he just does it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it too then. Why not? Like, we're just laughing in comms the entire time. So
it was Leafy who was sharking, and ultimately that's who you jumped to.
Yeah, and then we just kept on trading on it and jumping. I don't even know how it happened. It just did.
So crazy.
So, Jared, I gotta ask you this. Because last week, after you guys destroyed Nightmare, you made a little tweet here asking when Nightmare was supposed to play their set. I'm looking at the Jackpot Twitter right now, and I don't see any shade being thrown in the direction of Zero Deaths. Is that because you guys just have a little bit more respect for them?
I wouldn't say that. I think we went into the set knowing that we were going to win dominantly, but we just felt like keeping it respectful this week. Didn't want to be the villain team for this week. Leave that to a different team.
People love a villain team. Why not go all in? I liked it, but then again, I'm not the one actually playing, so there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Just you go ahead. My bad.
Oh no! Follow up with what Popgun was asking.
I was just saying, like, the first tweet. Some people didn't like that, but this time it's like we'll be a bit nicer. Why not?
Well, hey, Jared, you have Crush Soda, who you're going to be playing next week. You're 2-0 right now. We'll see what happens to them tomorrow, but what are your thoughts leading into that set next weekend?
I feel like we can win pretty soundly, but they can also just pop up. Like, it depends on their mental, especially Goss as a player. I feel like Goss either makes or breaks that team, so we'll see how they do next week with that.
Well, Jared, congratulations once again. You guys have all but qualified for the playoffs. There'd be a whole lot of shenanigans that would have to take place to knock you guys out now. And good luck next week. It's going to be a match we're all going to be looking forward to for sure.
All right, thank you. It was nice having me here. Thank you.
And that was Jared from Jackpot. Hey, not as controversial as a Madness player, so nice to have a little bit of a balance on that team right there. But good to show a little bit of humility, and it's nice to see when they're just destroying everybody that they're playing at this point.
You know, just kind of toning it down to, like you said, for this second set. Okay, like, you get all your energy to during the first set, and you know, kind of what Jared was saying. Okay, we're gonna be a little more respectful and sensitive here, moving on to the next opponent. But yeah, I mean, looking forward to next week too. I think, you know, what Jared said kind of about Goss being one of the players who can make it or break it, as far as if Jackpot can break through. That's going to be a very tough match at Popgun.
It's going to be one we're going to be looking forward to as well. Before we get to that, though, we got to get to the match you guys have been looking forward to, the match of the week, Alliance Rogue versus Graveyard Shift. That's going to do it for Falco and I. We're going to toss it back to the analyst to start previewing that set.